Hello guys. Today we will continue the theme 6 of history. In last part we discussed up to the Sufis. We have a little part remaining, so the relationship between the Sufis and state. The major feature of the Chishti tradition was austerity, including maintaining a distance from the worldly power. However, this was by no means a situation of absolute isolation from political power. It says that the Chishti Silsila or the Chishtis keep themselves far from the worldly power, but it does not mean that they are completely isolated from the political power. The Sufis accepted no, sorry, the Sufis accepted unsolicited grants and donations from the political elites. The sultans in turn set up charitable trusts as endowments for hospices and granted tax-free land. The Chishtis accepted donations in cash and kind. It's an important point. When we talk about the Sufism state or the Sufis, they accepted the donations either in cash or kind. Kings did not simply need to demonstrate their association with Sufis, they also required legitimation from them. There were instances of conflict between sultans and the Sufis. To assert their authority, both expected that certain rituals be performed. Here we says that Chishti Sufis always try to keep themselves distant from the power. But however, it was not a what will say 10% true. They had some power games. There were some power games happening between the sultans and Sufis. Now we are moving to the next topic: new devotional paths, dialogue and dissent in northern India. Many poets and engaged in explicit and implicit dialogue was with these new social situations, ideas, and institutions. Here we will talk about Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak and Mirabai, and we will conclude this chapter. Okay, let's start with Kabir. Kabir, 14th to 15th centuries. He lived somewhere in 14th or 15th century. Kabir is one of the most outstanding examples of a poet saint in this context. Kabir Das was raised by a poor Muslim family belonging to the community of weavers or Julahas, who were relatively recent converts to Islam. Verses ascribed to Kabir have been compiled in three distinct but overlapping traditions. The Kabir Bijak is preserved in the Kabir Panath in Varanasi and elsewhere in Uttar Pradesh. The Kabir Grandhavali is associated with the Dadu Panth in Rajasthan, and many of his compositions are found in Adi Granth Sahib. Kabir's poems have survived in several languages and dialects, and some are composed in the special language of Nirguna poets, the Sant Bhasha, others known as Ulta Bansi, Ulat Bansi. Ulta, like we know now, ulta means upside down. We say Ulat Bansi's same upside down sayings are written in a form which everyday meanings are inverted. The range of traditions Kabir drew o- the range of traditions Kabir drew on to describe the ultimate reality include Allah, Khuda, Hasrat and Pir. He also used terms drawn from Vedantic traditions. Alak means the unseen, Niragar, formless, Brahman, Atman, etc. The range of traditions Kabir drew on to describe the ultimate reality or God. We say the God is the ultimate reality. The range of traditions Kabir drew on to describe the ultimate reality include Allah, Khuda, Hasrat or Pir. He even used some Vedantic traditions like Alak, Niragar, Brahman, Atman, etc. Diverse and sometimes conflicting ideas are expressed in these poems. We can see diverse and conflicting, sometimes conflicting ideas in the Kabir's poems. Some poems draw on Islamic ideas and use monotheism and iconoclasm to attack Hindu polytheism and idol worship. Others use the Sufi concept of Sikr and Ishq, love, to express the Hindu practice of Nam Simran, remembrance of God's name. His valuable legacy, which is relevant for later generations, was claimed by several groups, which is most evident in later debates about whether he was a Hindu or a Muslim by birth. Here we talked about Kabir. We talked about Kabir's family and Kabir Bijak, Ulat, Ulat Bansi, etc. And the traditions Kabir to describe the God or ultimate reality. and we talked about the debates about the legacy of Kabir. And here we talk about Baba Guru Nanak. Baba Guru Nanak. Baba Guru Nanak was born in a Hindu merchant family in a village called Nankana Sahib near the river Ravi in the predominantly Muslim Punjab. We talked about where he born and all. He also traveled widely and spent most of his time among Sufis and Bhaktas. The message of Baba Guru Nanak is spelled out in his hymns and teachings. These suggest that he advocated for a form of Nirguna Bhakti. He rejected sacrifices, ritual baths, image worship, austerities, and the scriptures of both Hindus and Muslims. For Baba Guru Nanak, the absolute or Rab had no gender or form. According to Guru Nanak, or for Guru Nanak, the absolute or Rab had no gender or form. He proposed a simple way to connect to the divine by remembering and repeating the divine name through hymns called Shabad in Punjab. His attendant was Mardana, who played the rabab while Nanak used to sing the ragas. Baba Guru Nanak organized his followers into a community. He set up rules for congregational worship involving collective recitation. He appointed one of his disciples, Angad, to succeed him as a preceptor or guru, and his practice was followed. And this practice was followed for nearly 200 years. Listen, Baba Guru Nanak appointed one of his disciples, Angad, to succeed him as the preceptor, and this practice was followed for nearly 200 years. The fifth preceptor, Guru Arjun, compiled Baba Guru Nanak's hymns along with those of his four successors and other religious poets like Baba Farid, Ravidas, also known as Raidas, and Kabir in the Adi Granth Sahib. These hymns are called Gurbani. In the late 17th century, the 10th preceptor Guru Gobind Singh included the compositions of the 9th Guru, Guru Tej Bahadur, and the scripture was called the Guru Granth Sahib. It is Guru Granth Sahib. Guru Gobind Singh also laid the foundation of the Khalsa Panth. About Baba Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak born in a predominantly Muslim Punjab. He travelled a lot, and the message of Baba Guru Nanak is spelled out in his hymns and teachings. He rejected sacrifices, ritual bath, image worship, etc. etc. For Baba Guru Nanak, the absolute or Rabbi is a genderless and formless one. And we talk about the Gurus and the Guru Gobind Singh, etc. and Guru Granth Sahib. Next is a woman, Mirabai. Mirabai is the best known women poet of the Bhakti tradition. Her bhajans were transmitted orally for centuries. She was a Rajput princess from Merta in Marwar who was married against her wishes to a prince of the Sisodia clan of Marwar, Rajasthan. Mirabai was a Rajput princess from Mitra in Marwar who was married against her wishes to a prince of the Sisodia clan of Marwar in Rajasthan. She defied her husband and did not submit to the traditional role of wife and mother, instead recognizing Krishna, the avatar of Vishnu, as her lover. He recognized Krishna, the 10th, not 10th, the 9th avatar of Vishnu, as her lover. Her in-laws tried to poison her, but she escaped from the palace to live as a wandering singer, composing songs that are characterized by intense expression of emotion. Her preceptor was Raidas, a leather worker, which indicates her defiance of the norms of caste society. As we talked earlier in the previous classes, the society then or the viewpoint of the society was too much based on caste. But at that time, we can see a fact that Mirabai's teacher or preceptor was a Raidas. He was a leather worker. Naturally, he is from a lower caste. It shows that she defined the norms of a caste society. After rejecting all her comfort, he donned the white robes of a widow or the saffron robe of the renouncer. This is what we have to study about Mirabai. Mirabai was a Rajput princess. She was married to a prince of Sisodia clan of Rajasthan. But he defied her husband, and he did not follow the duties of a mother or a wife, and he recognized Krishna as her lover and everything. Then the conclusion. We are going to end this chapter. The devotional worship of God with the ultimate objective of attaining moksha or salvation is called bhakti. The word bhakti was derived from the root word bhaj, meaning to adore or worship. The impact of bhakti movement on the Indian society was significant and far-reaching. Virtually, all these religious traditions continue to flourish to date. This continuity has certain advantages for historians as it follows them to compare contemporary practices with those described in textual traditions or shown in old paintings to trace changes. Thus, we end this chapter. On next class, we will come with the theme 7.